This conference will now be recorded.
I pressed record, so I thought I had done my job.
She was just trying to meet you, but everyone.
Thank you. Sorry for those who are virtual. So the first item is a further discussion again regarding the lease of property from Copley Fairlawn City Schools for parking near the circle. Just to report that we did mention it at the CIC meeting, as they are property owners that are affected by the lease and by the parking lot, that it's to be constructed at the middle school or would be constructed at the middle school. And just reporting back there, they were a little concerned just because they are in the process of sending out RFPs for a market analysis of the Copley Circle area. And they were wondering if that report would come back and indicate that parking would be better placed somewhere else, if we could have something in the lease agreement that would allow the township to get out of putting a parking lot there. They're planning on having that RFP done here near September. And so if the lease is put in place before that market analysis comes back, would we be able to have a clause in the agreement that would allow us to move it or not proceed?
So I was at the CIC meeting as well, and I explained my take on the subject matter was that the market study for that area was going to be on, quote, available land in the, I think there's somebody trying to chime in.
I think it's an echo on you. Maybe David. Okay.
So this was land that was not originally going to be part of the study because it is school property. It has nothing really to do with or very minimal impact on land that's available for other economic development. So I thought it was best to move forward without a feasibility study because it's basically going to be used for public parking on school property that we would not have access to anything other than parking. We can't build a building there. They want a 99-year lease that they can get out of in case they need to expand. So it can only be a parking lot or what it is now, a ball diamond that doesn't get a whole lot of use. So that was my take on it. I don't think we need to wait on the feasibility study or the market study for the area that the CIC is doing. Mr. Klein, if you want to chime in on that with your opinions, you feel free to do so.
No, I think it's just like you, just general questions about the timing of when the market study will be completed, when the lease parking design and stuff will begin. So I think the timing will work out. There will be some time before we can engineer parking. Market analysis will likely be completed in the next couple of months before any construction will occur. Again, it's a minimal cost to the lease. If for any reason there's an alarming concern with why this parking will be located there, I don't think anybody's going to be harmed. But again, I think we all feel that there is definitely need for the parking in the area, for new businesses, for the circle. And as you alluded to, there's not necessarily a better use for the property. It doesn't impact the property's fronting on Copley Road or Cleveland Massillon by this location. So I think we all agree it's a great location. I think the CIC liked it. So just a few questions about timing of what the CIC is investing in the market study. But I think think we're all on the right track.
May I?
Absolutely.
I'm appalled that somebody would think that adding public parking adjacent to a commercial lot would not enhance the property value.
Well, that did come up, and they recognize that too. I think the question was, are we building a parking lot in an area that would be better suited for a building or some other type of structure? In my opinion on it is it's school property. It's property we do not have access to now, but the school will allow us to build a parking lot in conjunction with them, meaning they're going to give up the land unless they need it for expansion down the road, which they don't foresee. So with that, I just don't see the need for moving forward. And as Mr. Loudon Klein said, it's about the market study should come back before we actually break ground. So if there's something really glaring that we don't foresee, we'll still have time.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't affect any properties fronting along there. So if we were building this on land that would be better suited to frontage along there. It's a conversation, but this is going to be off the rear of all those properties. Minimal impact for access.
I think this needs turned on its head. I think the market study that CIC is doing on the properties they own should be done with the fact that a parking lot is going to be adjacent,
Right.
Yeah,
not
well, absolutely.
that greatly impacts and improves the ability to make improvements to the lots that CIC and their neighboring parcels own, as opposed to having to provide for on-site parking.
And that came up also. It's very evident for the businesses that are trying to thrive at the circle now and future businesses through the CIC or privately owned. There's no parking down there. So it's an issue. It's an issue for everybody. So if we can it's an issue for the school as well. When they have special events, they have issues with parking themselves. And this, the idea is to build a gate there so they can open it, keep the school grounds safe, locked during school day. And then during activity periods, when they have a band concert or some other school extracurricular activity, they can open that gate and allow, 60 to 80 more cars to park there. I think it's a win-win for everybody. So with that, I just would stick with our original plan and keep moving forward.
Okay. The next item is a discussion regarding initiating the process required to prepare a disclosure statement to receive a bond rating. And I'm bringing this up again tonight just because there were some unanswered questions from the last meeting. I did reach out to our financial advisor who has been involved with us in issuing bonds and the many questions that we've had. And one of the questions was, as a rough estimate, what is the cost? And he indicated that depends on how much you are issuing, of course. For example, a general obligation bond for $5 to $10 million carries a rating fee of $18,000. That would be on top then of any fees incurred through bond counsel or the financial advisor. Then it asked we were asking how long the bond rating would be relevant. If we went for a bond rating now and had a project down the road, would it still be relevant? And he's saying that a rating is good for about 2 months after it's established and if no debt is issued once it's been established. He did indicate, though, that it would be highly unusual to get a rating established if there were no immediate plans to issue the debt. And then another question about how long does the process take? It takes about 6 weeks to prepare the official statement, and then generally 2 to 3 weeks to close the issue. And then finally, I asked if he had other governmental entities that issue bonds at one time for multiple projects, and he said, yes, it's highly advisable to keep issuance costs low. So I just want to report that back to the board from our last discussion.
Would you like me to speak?
You're looking like you want to talk, so have at it.
I did reach out to Chris Burnham at DFA to find out what their credit rating was, and they are A-. And for them. And Chris believes that because we're debt-free, if we were to do an initial issuance, we would probably come in with a single A rating, and there'd be a significant interest savings over what DFA could do for us. That's his initial opinion without having reviewed our financials. So,
No, he's in the mix. He knows. He did the Port
right.
Authority.
And he's a local guy. He lives right up in Redmond Path. So he knows what's happening in the township. And so I guess the point is the amount of interest savings that we would have if we were A-rated versus A- with DFA would indicate that the $18,000 rating fee would be more than worth it. That we should move forward because the interest savings we would have with our own bond rating.
Okay, but we have to have a project first for the, right?
Correct. We have to identify the projects.
Okay,
And yes.
so,
And a dollar amount.
right, so we have, do you want to discuss the projects we approved in March? And go through that list? Okay,
Yes, sir.
Ms. Marshall, you have that list?
I do not. I know you asked me to prepare that and I did not.
Okay,
I completely forgot, sorry.
that's okay. Can you find it in an email or something when it is we're moving through the meeting, come back to it? Or do we have to? Bring this up.
I can get it from my office. I have it printed out in my office probably.
You want to save that discussion for later?
I think we should.
All right.
But I think we should save it for later this meeting. I think it's important that we begin to move now. Interest rates are not going to get any better. And we know we're at least 6 weeks out from issuance if we started today. It's a conversation that we need to have today and hopefully by next meeting decide what we're going to fund.
So estimates on interest rates for these projects are between 1% and 2%. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I don't want to,
Well, the other part, Bruce, is
Yeah.
it's, you do the tax, if you do tax-free, that becomes part of the discount. That's why it seems exceptionally low, but the tax-free part is what.
right, that's why. But still, to us, it's 1% to 2%. So we're talking about doing capital improvement projects at basically free dollars. Or not completely free, but close. So I've mentioned that before when we talked about the safety center and improving Sunset Drive, that if we're going to do that, now is the time to do it before interest rates start creeping up, which they're going to start creeping up. So I'm all for that. So we'll work on that. I would like to start from it's been many, many years since the Board of Trustees were able to agree on a capital improvements project list for the board. And we have that now. We agreed on it in March, so I want to move forward with that list. And then I fully recognize that there could be some opportunities that were not visible back in March that might become visible now to the rescue plan dollars and other things that we might need to adjust that list. I have no issue with that. We need to keep our eyes on that, but if there isn't anything like that, let's keep moving on the list we have. Okay. All right, we'll look at that list here in a little bit. We get a chance. Anything else for the Board of Trustees? All right. Ms. Pfeiffer.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm going to start out by a motion to approve the Board of Trustees regular meeting minutes of July 1st or July 13th, 2021.
So move Schulte.
Second.
Any corrections, additions, or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the motion.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. Next, a motion to acknowledge the receipt and approval pending audit of the June 2021 financial statements.
Also move.
Second, Dressler.
Sorry, did you have a question?
June.
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 So what you said? Yeah, June 2021.
Yeah, June.
Any discussion? Call for the vote or motion, I'm sorry.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. Next is a resolution amending the certificate of estimated resources. We received funds, additional funds through July 20th that needs to be reported to the Summit County fiscal officer in the amount of $350,420.05. And I can give you that breakdown if you'd like.
I don't think we have the resolution here. It talks,
Okay.
it's gasoline tax, a road, bridge, cemetery, garbage and waste disposal, police district, fire and EMS, drug law enforcement, the DARE grant, and the Copley tree fund. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Also move.
Second.
Any discussion? We have a
Do you have a
resolution number?
76.
86? You said?
76?
76. Okay. It would be resolution 76.
Any other discussion? We call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Colder?
Yes.
And Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. An update on the banking request for proposals. We had our meeting on the 22nd, and that was our pre-bid meeting, and nobody showed up. But we did hear from Chase Bank. They're going to be putting in an RFP. So we're anxious to see what they have to offer. And we're going to have our 2020 audit. It's going to start August 5th. This is going to be a special audit because of the COVID funds that we received. We're going to be audited on how those funds were spent. So they will be in here August 5th. And they will just do a one-year audit. So, and lastly, I'm going to request an executive session to discuss the benefits of personnel in the fiscal office. And that's all I have.
Question about the audit, please.
Yes,
Do they audit just the COVID expenditures or all the township?
they
bills?
will do a full audit, just like they normally do.
How long will they be here?
I have no idea.
Okay.
No idea. They will be here at 8 o'clock on August 5th.
Anything else for Ms. Piper?
I have one more thing.
Okay.
I received a notice from the Department of Commerce, Division of Liquor Control, notifying everyone that liquor licenses permits will expire October 1st. And so they will have to renew them. Must use the renewal application.
Chief, this is our time to ask for a hearing if we so desire. Do you have anything for us there? Do you want to put it on the agenda for next meeting or the meeting after? Thank you, sir. Anything else from Ms. Piper? All right. Ms. Marshall.
Thank you. The first item I have is regarding the expiring tax levy for the police department. The levy expires at the end of December of 2021. So we need to put a resolution on the ballot requesting a renewal replacement of that levy. After speaking with Chief Meyer, we're recommending and requesting a resolution declaring it necessary to levy a tax to replace the current 3.5 mil 3-year police levy with a 3.5 mil continuous levy for the benefit of the police department.
So move for discussion.
I'll second.
So the replacement rather than renewal was minimal in difference in revenue. Is that accurate? I remember seeing the notes on that.
The replacement is a larger, a larger yield than a renewal.
Right, by very little though. Right.
About 232,000.
So it's still 3.5. That's what it is now, replacing
Yes.
a 3.5 with a 3.5.
Continues.
In, was there discussion about continuous, Chief?
Replacement either way.
Right, so correct, we know about the replacement, but do you want a continuous versus every 3 years? Was there any discussion about that? As we did with the fire department at their last one.
We discussed the pros and cons, and I know trustee Schulte has some feelings about it being continuous, and so we looked at both of them, and it's ultimately the board's
Well,
decision.
Jim makes a good point. My experience comes from continuous versus renewal it's different, but from the school standpoint, having to renew all the time is risky. And it's a point well taken. You lose the value. So over time, what happens is then to get more money, you'll have to do additional millage or change the budget or whatever you need to do. But then if the people they're willing to renew every 3 years, and you look forward to proving yourselves, and you have to raise more money. So I'm in favor of it.
I'll have to say the same because, Chief, I understand that what you've been using for the last 3 or 4 decades has been renewal. And every time you renew it, you get the new tax evaluation of the community's real estate, which generally, not always, but generally brings an increase in your funding. This won't allow for that, but it will allow you to place a replacement levy on there. If you want to do a 3.5 replacement 5 years from now or 2 years from now, you can still do that with board approval or ask for that, and we can look at it. What I like about continue, now I have heard from people in the public about the issue is it doesn't give them an opportunity, it doesn't give the public the opportunity to vote it down if something is disliked or they don't want to fund that any longer. I don't see that happening with the police department. It's very well liked. Your department performs very well. So I'm not concerned about that. I am concerned about the amount of labor and other things that we do, that you folks do to make that happen, make that replacement happen every 3 years. It would take something off your plate that I think is deserving to get off your plate. That's my opinion. So the motion is currently for a 3.5 replacement levy to replace an old 3.5 or expiring 3.5 levy, instead of doing one that renews or comes up every 3 years, do it continuous. Is that what you second?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anything else you want to bring up about that, Chief? No. All right. Ms. Pfeiffer, recall the roll, please.
Yeah, that'll be resolution 77. Trustee Dressler,
Yes.
trustee Colner,
Yes.
trustee Schulte.
Yes.
Thank you. My next item is regarding funding from and reporting from the American Rescue Plan Act. We are due to receive funds from this Rescue Plan Act, and in order to apply for the funds, we need to designate a contact person to receive all the information on funding and reporting, and we also need to designate an authorized representative. So the motion I have in front of you is to designate the township administrator as the contact person to receive all information on funding and reporting to the American Rescue Plan Act, and the chairperson of the Board of Trustees as the authorized representative.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think the township administrator is a good choice. The chairman of the board, though, I'm not sure.
Wow.
I'm with you there.
Smoked him.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, wakes everybody up.
It is fishing season, so. Any other discussion? All right, I'll call for the motion.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. The only other item I have here is just an update, just a reminder that we will be going on the Civic Plus Media streaming beginning in September. It will be streaming these meetings live and on at regular time. And it will be able to be placed on our website. You'll be able to access the meetings through our website, and they will be stored then on our website along with the agenda and the minutes. That will begin in September. Just a reminder for the public that they will not be able to communicate with us during the meeting like they are able to during a go-to meeting. So we're giving it time to make sure that everyone's on the same page. These go-to meetings have the ability to allow interaction between the public and the board, and that will not happen on the streaming platform from Civic Plus. So they would need to appear in person, just a reminder. And then finally, I'd like to request an executive session to discuss hiring of personnel in the service department and benefits of personnel and administration.
Okay.
Put Bruce's cell up on the screen, they could call in.
Yeah.
Put him
Yeah.
on speaker.
Anything else from Ms. Marshall? Okay. Chief Bauer, you're up.
Thank you and good evening. The first two resolutions that I have for your consideration were both budgeted for. The first one is a purchase order in the amount of $7,300 to ESO Solutions to renew the annual patient care reporting software that we use. It's worth noting that this is reimbursed to us from Cleveland Clinic Akron General. So even though we're spending this money now, as we get into the fall, we'll take that paid invoice, turn it into Akron General. Because they're our medical control, they pay for this service for us.
So moved, Schulte.
Second, Dressler.
Any other discussion? Ms. Pfeiffer, call the roll, please.
Chris, do you happen to have the phone number on that?
It's 2191 220 360.
220.
It's included in the resolution.
All right. Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
And Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. Next resolution is a request to approve a purchase order in the amount of $5,620 to Lexipol. And this renews our Fire Rescue One online training suite. If you remember, this was new to us last year. It helped us to kind of claw back to a point where we were doing adequate training for both fire and EMS. And this is something that we continue to use. It not only benefits us in the training, but it also is saving us in overtime. Personnel are able to do this while they're on duty. They're also able to do it from home. And a good portion of those hours we used to pay overtime for employees to come in off duty.
So moved, Schulte.
Second, Dressler.
Any further discussion?
Yes, that's how you sold it to us last year, was that it was actually a cost saver. So I'm all in favor of
My sales pitch hasn't changed.
it.
Yeah. That's how my wife, when she buys something, tells me how much she saved. Is that the same?
That's the same thing, yes.
Ms. Pfeiffer, call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item for consideration is a resolution to accept grant funds in the amount of $2,632.78 from the Ohio Department of Public Safety, Division of Emergency Services. This is what we typically refer to as EMS training and equipment grant. It is a reimbursable grant. And so with your resolution, you should also see additional language that creates an account and fronts the money for this, which we will then spend. And as we get into next spring, we will take those paid receipts, turn them into the Department of Public Safety and be reimbursed.
So moved, Schulte.
Second, Dressler.
Any other discussion? Ms. Pfeiffer, call the roll, please.
Be Resolution 80. Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Thank you. Next item for consideration is a motion to accept with regret resignation of Robert Dillon. Robert Dillon's been on an extended leave of absence. He spends most of his time when he's not working full-time at another fire department at Tri-C. And he's teaching in their fire service program. So this does not have a negative impact on us as far as filling hours, since Robert's been on a leave of absence for an extended period of time. But we do regret that he's leaving and not able to come back. He's very good.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the motion.
Dressel, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Similarly, I have a motion to accept with regret a letter of resignation from Dave Mordarski effective immediately. Dave is another person that's been on a long-term, it's been about, well, actually over a year, I believe, long-term disability due to an injury that did not happen here. He's decided he's not able to return. And so we regret that he's not going to be able to come back.
So moved, Schulte.
Second.
I'll call for, any discussion? Call for the motion.
Dressel, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. I don't have any additional information on overtime, but as we're at the second meeting in the month of another update at the first meeting in August. Capital projects update, I did get a proposal from our architect, which I sent to Dave Firestein. He's going to review that as to form. Once he's satisfied, I'll review it with Ms. Marshall as to content, and we'll bring that to the board for approval next week once it's been completely vetted. Two other things that I'd like to mention that are not on the agenda for tonight. As the board knows, but I don't know how much it's got into the public, but Keith Moore, our assistant chief, is retiring effective August 6th. These are going to be difficult shoes to fill. Also, as you know, and much of the public may not have heard, Steve Blaisdell is going to be replacing him as the assistant chief. It's a very good choice. And yesterday, Steve began 2 weeks of training with Keith, which will culminate in Keith's last day and Steve's first day. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Keith for not only everything that he's done for the department, but everything that he's done for me. It may not be well known that when I was a firefighter and then a lieutenant, Keith was our captain. I reported to him. When I was captain, he was assistant chief. Again, I reported to him. Ultimately, when I was promoted to chief, and this is all the credit goes to Keith on this, I went from being Keith's subordinate to his supervisor. And it was from Keith's standpoint, from my view, it was seamless. And if I'm ever in a situation like that, I hope that I would handle things as well as he did. I don't know how to say it any better. I was captain and then I was chief, and he treated me like the chief and still found a way to guide me and steer me. And so I don't know if he logged in tonight to listen, but I want to make sure that this is my last opportunity in public before he retires to thank him. His open house for well-wishers is going to be the afternoon on the 5th here in the North Room. His last day as assistant chief will be August 6th, and Steve Blaisdell's first official day as our new assistant chief will be August 7th. So with that, I'll ask the board if you have any issues for me. If not, that's all I have to do.
Nothing. You have anything?
Okay.
All right. Thank you for the comments. Appreciate it. Chief Meyer.
Thank you.
First item this evening is have a motion to accept with regret a letter of resignation from part-time officer Ben Campbell. As you know, Ben Campbell was a full-time officer with our department for many years. A couple of years ago, he retired from his full-time position and asked to remain in the part-time position, which he did, and he worked a lot at the schools as a school resource officer, and he has now decided to leave law enforcement altogether. So it's with regret that I'm asking you to accept his letter of resignation.
So move Schulte.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the motion.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. And the second item, I'm requesting a motion to accept, again with regret, a letter of retirement from Administrative Assistant Sandy Bittner. She submitted a letter this past week in which she said, please accept this letter of retirement as Administrative Assistant of Copley Police Department effective September the 2nd. I'm extremely grateful for all the experiences, opportunities, township benefits, interaction with residents, and knowledge gained working alongside law enforcement, who I have the utmost respect for. I've enjoyed all aspects of my job for the past 30 years. However, I'm ready to move on in the next phase of my life. And as her letter indicates, she was with us for 30 years. She was a very valuable assistant. Sandy grew up in the community, so she knew and knows many of the folks that live in this community and the second and third generation folks living in the community, which was invaluable. And for those that she didn't know from growing up, that she met in her daily interactions with folks that came to the police department, or that she met in her various other interactions, the programs she ran, like the Christmas program and Safety Town. She really knew a lot of people in the community. And she was a very valuable asset, because when folks come in, very often when they come into the police station, they're coming in because they're in a real quandary. They have some real questions. They don't know where to go. She was the first point of contact, or is still the first point of contact, in which very often she might spend 15, 20 minutes or a half hour speaking to whoever is there until a police officer comes on station and can deal with them from the law enforcement aspect. She would deal with them from the personal interaction aspect. So she will be missed. We wish her luck in her future endeavors. She is going to remain as a part-time dispatcher with Swisscom, and we're going to miss her, and it's going to be a void to fill.
So move Schulte.
Second, Dressler.
Any other discussion? I'll call for the motion.
Dressler, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you. In terms of overtime, we were reviewing overtime, and our overtime compensation through the end of June, which were the most readily available figures, shows that we're running approximately 18% of the payroll on overtime, which is right where we've been most of the year, perhaps just a tick higher. I did note that in this last payroll period, we had 335 hours of overtime compensation, which was slightly above the average pay period of 299 hours. Some of that was due to a few incidents. We had some shift carryover this time that was partially required because we also did some in-house training. We had 81 hours of in-house training, which was primarily for our officers to go to the range for range training and qualification, which of course is required. That also drove the fact that there was a need to cover some of the shifts for some of those officers that were in training or the officers that were conducting the training. We had a few hours of overtime compensation for community events, specifically the Copley Car Show, in which we had 3 officers there. Car show was very well attended and was a success. We assigned a couple officers to be available for traffic and to mingle in the crowd. And we also had a 3rd officer who was there that was kind of overseeing our CERT team volunteers that came to help out free of charge. And we also had some SWAT training this month in the amount of 25 hours. Our average for SWAT training is usually about 10.2 hours per pay period, give or take. It was a little bit higher this time. We had all 3 of our SWAT team officers who were engaged in training. 2 of them are operators, meaning that they work in actual law enforcement functions as operators, and 1 is a negotiator. All 3 were in training. There's 2 days of training each for the operators, and usually 1 day of training for the negotiator. So overtime is pretty much consistent with what we've been doing this month, just a little bit higher due to those areas that I noted. And that's all I have to say.
Anything for Chief Meyer?
Capital projects, chief, and improvements to your facility.
Improvements to the facility, as you know, there has been somebody that's been reviewing our facility for the past few weeks. In fact, they were there again today, so they're continuing their effort. We don't have a report, obviously, as of yet. They're working very closely with Mark Mitchell and Bob Blacknick and his team as they go through our building, and it's pretty extensive. I think today, they actually had to get up into the attic of the building to take a look around due to the construction and also some issues with the roof. So I think it's going to be a little bit yet before we have something concrete there. And in terms of other capital projects, nothing new to report during the last couple.
On the facility, I'm thinking aloud, and I'm thinking that if we're going to have to issue some debt for other improvements, if your facility requirements are substantial, it'd be good to know what that number is ahead of time.
Exactly. No, we're waiting to find out what that is. I don't really want to know, but I do want to know. So
It's now or never, chief. Yes, sir.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
With the, on another subject, with Officer Campbell leaving, do we need to open a discussion about supplying a student resource officer to the high school?
Well, right now I'd spoken to Brian Poe, the superintendent of schools. We're going to do like we have been doing, which is we'll utilize various officers on off-duty at those schools. Ben Campbell primarily worked the high school. We did have other officers that worked at that school when he was unavailable. So we're going to do the same thing, just fill in up there for right now. I have in the past kind of tried to seek out some grants, was unable to get anything. We'll continue to look for grants for school resource officers. However, that's a whole different topic, because it's not just simply a grant for an officer to work in schools. Under those grants, if we hire somebody to work in the schools, we as a police department would have to assume some of their salary, the schools would assume some of their salary, and then after a period of time, which is usually 3 years, the police department will assume the entire salary, unless we have some kind of prearranged agreement. So it's not that easy, but if we do come across some sort of grant, we'll put something together.
Okay, keep us informed there, please. Anything else for Chief Meyer? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Blacknick, thanks for stepping in for Mr. Mitchell.
Good evening. I just have a few requests tonight. My first request is a resolution granting permission to enter into a 1-year agreement with AmeriGas to supply the holding tank and liquid propane for the drug incineration at the police department.
So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion?
I read the details, but I don't recall, is there an estimated cost? It's not that much, is it?
Well,
Chief, how often would you be burning?
Well, we don't know yet.
Right,
Obviously, this is going to be a experiment. We
right.
have a background, see how much gas we use.
So there'll be an initial startup
There'll be
and
an initial startup,
and then you can just time it.
There are a couple of departments out there, saying those who are in. Like, drugs in exchange for some other services that they're able to provide us. It's going to take a little while before we get a handle on exactly what it is.
Right.
I don't anticipate based on information we've seen.
The resolution that we prepared has a purchase order in the amount of $1,200, and that covers $215 of installation costs, and then four fillings of the propane tanks that hold 100 gallons at $2.17 per gallon.
No, I
Just to start.
you had mentioned before that we could, other communities would want to acquire our services potentially, so that either trade services or offset costs.
Offset costs, correct.
Okay.
Because everybody's in the same boat.
What account is this coming from?
The police 2081.
Oh, I see it now, okay.
10,420.
The only question I had. Any other questions? Ms. Pfeiffer, you call the roll, please.
Trustee Dressler?
Yes.
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Okay, the second item on here is discussion implementing the speed tables in neighborhoods.
I'm sorry.
The second item is discussion implementing of speed tables.
So do you have more information than Mr. Mitchell brought last?
And we still haven't received.
Oh, here it is.
Okay.
I
So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I included a copy of the draft traffic calming policy in your packets. I think that was the one item that Mr. Mitchell wanted some discussion or input, or if you had changes or needed to make additions or deletions.
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear. I was talking to the fiscal officer. Are the speed tables here?
No, we have not received them. They were supposed to be delivered today and they were held up, so
Okay.
we're looking for them tomorrow morning. Whether that happens or not, I do not know.
Okay.
As of today, right now, they have not been delivered.
And we ordered 3, as I recall.
5 of them.
5 of them? Okay.
I
That's
believe
right.
five.
Maybe 4 or 5.
I thought it was
I,
four.
I thought it was 4 as well.
Well,
Pretty sure it's 4.
It's 4.
4, I'm sorry, that's correct.
okay.
They're 5,000 each and there were 4 of them.
Correct, I'm sorry. 4.
So the one thing when I took a look at this draft was the implementation process. It talks about submitting a request to the Township Board of Trustees and the police chief and the service director by whoever's going to request this. If a neighbor, if a resident wants this, are we asking them to submit this to everybody? Seems to me that there should be a point of contact as opposed to everybody. That's in step 2.
Yeah. Just say to the township administrator, and then they can
Exactly.
give everybody the notice. Same
There you go.
time.
Mhm.
Trustees, chiefs, directors.
And, you know, from a practical perspective, do we want this to be a board decision, or do we want to lay this in the hands of our department heads, which is where I think it belongs?
I agree. We're not, I mean, we can field the request, but we're not the experts to diagnose the information given. So that should be
And I
done.
think we had gone that direction already. Upon recommendation, we have to decide eventually. but
Okay.
Upon recommendation
Yeah.
of the,
On recommendation of the service director and the police chief, the board should vote.
we should get,
That's what I think this should be, because I don't, it would seem unfair to put either department head in a compromising position with the residents. That's our job, to be in compromising positions. But we want your input before we
No, I
decide.
understand. The problem is right now, speed limits around that is much less intensive thing. This requires installation of a roadway. It's a much more significant step taking place. And so without it done, the recommendation part of this and all of it. Up forward.
Okay.
That's
And these basically aren't something that is easily moved.
Right. It's there for the year,
Right.
at least, maybe
Correct.
every year.
So based on data required, just to switch gears here a little bit, based on the data that you acquired so far, we still don't have enough data to decide where they're going. Is that correct?
No,
That's just for the public information.
no, we do not. We're about halfway through the streets in Copley. What we do is every Monday, we move the 4 radar signs that we have to 4 new locations. Every Monday, we go out and we download the data from the radar signs. And then that's all printed out, computer printout, which I believe that the
Yes,
trustees
yes, we have.
have seen it. So every Monday, we move to 4 new locations, we download the information, and we're about halfway through, a little over halfway through all the streets that we want to survey based on the survey that we sent out to the residents.
Right.
That's how we based what streets we're gonna go collect. the information from. Like I said, we're a little over halfway. And then that'll help, the department heads and the trustees decide
It's interesting to read
where the greatest.
the
need is.
data,
Mhm.
certainly.
There's also some things in this draft that I think are not expedient. And I wonder if we can maybe cut them out a little bit. Or somehow reduce the length of time so that we're more responsive to when the citizen requests this. In particular, the survey, after we've collected all of our data, but we're going to go back out and survey the residents of that street. In my mind, if our data from the speed signs indicates that we have a speeding problem, a high traffic count on the road, and it's a problem and where we should consider putting a speed table, I'm not sure why we should go out and then address the immediate neighbors. If it's a problem, it's a problem.
Well, this is a sample, so
Right.
the 66%, obviously that's,
Input from the trustees.
that's,
So that's what I'm trying to give you. I'm trying to give you
Negotiable.
my- I just, if the data suggests that a speed table should be placed on a road, I'm not sure why we would go out and then ask everybody.
That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
we set the parameters, ultimate, but so, we can, this is just Mark compiled
Yeah, no, it's
some
a,
different ones,
It's a
so.
draft, so.
this is much better than I would put together. So it's easy for me to sit here on the 11th hour and shoot holes in it.
No, that's why we're looking at it. And somebody else has different ways to address it.
I think he just wanted to cover all the bases for
Yeah.
everybody to review.
Yeah. Pretty comprehensive, it really is.
There's,
I
he
agree.
did mention having counsel David. Comments,
Yeah.
I think, it's pretty basic. It's been done already, so any comments from council?
Yeah, I reviewed it. Mark sent it to me. I reviewed it and responded back to him that I didn't see any legal issues from it. So from a legal perspective, looks good to me. From a substance perspective and the process that you guys want to engage in to decide where tables go, that's obviously up to you all.
Thank you, sir. I do agree with Mr. Schulte if it comes back and the need, I didn't think about that at the time, but it comes back and there's, like, I think Ridgecrest was on the data we have collected so far was the main culprit in our town. Regardless of what the neighbors want, something I would put one there. Regardless.
If it's a safety issue,
Yeah.
then it should go there.
Yeah. So I think I would be inclined to take that section out as well.
You're talking
It's not a popularity
Step forward,
vote.
yes, sir.
It's the minimum 66% and stuff for you. Just on a side note, they are, I guess, bothersome because I was driving my wife and father-in-law to church Sunday, and I made a turn. I was going through Fairlawn down through Brunsdorf and the Fairlawn allotment there, and he said, "Oh, don't go down that way. There's one of those speed tables down there. Don't go over." So I guess people will find a way around it or adjust traffic patterns due to them. So
Right.
yeah.
Spruce Run.
Yeah, exactly. In front of Spruce Run.
Well, and another thought on some of these longer roads like Westmont, one be enough.
Well, Mark mentioned that, yeah.
And where do you place it?
There's a history of, you can talk to people and get all of that. You can read all of that, the reactions and where to space them and where to put them. Mark spoke about that at the last meeting, so he suggested that you almost have to have two.
Yeah, different road segments. And it says in here in step 5 that service department will determine the exact location. And I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Do we want to make those two amendments?
I think that was pretty clear. Is that not right? Did anybody oppose to taking the step 4 adjustment out of there and the, what was the other step?
Made a request, step 2.
Oh, step 2, make it the township administrator in that one.
I'm good with that.
I'm fine with those too. So Mr. Blacknick, will you make those adjustments for us?
So you want to eliminate step 2 completely?
No. Step 2 is just adjust the point of contact for the public is the township administrator.
Okay.
Take out Copley Police Chief and Service Director, Highway Superintendent, and just put the township administrator.
And then step 4, you take out the section where if it's determined that they should get an area should receive a speed table, it does not call for a popularity vote afterwards.
So you don't want the minimum of 66%?
No.
Really, I think step 4 should probably be replaced with, upon recommendation of the police chief and the service director, township trustees will vote and determine. I think that's what we said here earlier.
Yeah.
That's fine.
So you're gonna get the data, report to us, make a recommendation, and then we vote.
That allows, not to say that the board of trustees are the experts in speed tables, because they're obviously not, but it would allow the board of trustees to address any concerns that are not picked up in a survey or not picked up in a request or not picked up by data collection. I don't perceive there would be any of those, but you don't never know.
Got another waiver that allows the public to address, if somebody doesn't want there, they can come.
Correct.
and address the public.
Yeah, that's a good point. They can come here and address their issues in front of us. Or the board. Okay. All right. We're pretty clear on that?
Do you want to adopt the policy or do you want us to revise it and bring it back?
With those 3 changes, I say I'm good to adopt, but I leave it to my fellow trustees.
We can always adjust it later, so I'm fine with it, because I don't want to hold this up any longer than we're doing. Still nice weather and school's gonna be upon us, where kids are gonna be out on the road more. I'd like to, we expect that delivery tomorrow or the next day. I'd like to get those in place rather than sitting in our garage. My opinion.
I agree.
That's fine. We can do the draft.
Okay.
Yeah, or it says draft, but just to do the policy now, I don't see any harm there.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the draft with the 3 changes that Mr. Blacknick has noted, noting that we can always adjust later as needed, which it probably will be. Being a new policy and a new thing, bless you, is going to most likely need some adjustment in the future. With that,
I'll second.
you got a second? Any other discussion?
No, I think we're good.
All right, call for the motion.
Dresser, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
Thank you.
All right, sir.
Okay, the next item I have is motion to approve a cemetery deed transfer from Cecil E. Thomas to Sandra L. Bittner. It's a 1 grave.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, call for the vote.
Dresser, yes.
Colner, yes.
Schulte, yes.
And the last item I have is cemetery deeds for the Dominic family.
For signature? Okay, I think Ms. Marshall's got them down there, correct? Okay, we'll take care of that for you. We'll get that to you for signed before you leave tonight, all right?
Okay.
Anything else for Mr., did you have anything else for us, sir?
No.
Anything for Mr. Blacknick? All right, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Klein? I almost called you Mr. Loudon.
Just do it. Call him loud.
It's a rather unique first name.
Loud and clear.
It is.
All right, thank you. So I would like to give an update, as I mentioned at the last meeting, on a couple projects that are new to the community or that we've seen some construction taking place. So we'll give an update first on large scale projects. So at the top of your screen, you'll see we have a new Tesla service facility. This will also be a charging station. This will be located at 52 Springside Drive. This is the former Toys R Us, Babies R Us location up in the Montrose area. So this is a great adaptive reuse of the building that is sat vacant and seen some temporary transient tenants in the recent 12 months. So we're excited about that. This would be, as I mentioned, a service facility only. They'll have different service bays. I don't know the exact number, but it's all internal. So it's all kept very nice and neat and won't be any exterior servicing of the vehicles.
Chief's new car.
The new police vehicles.
Hey, that's what the trend is.
Shane, serves the car and the stun guns at the same time?
So it will have, as I mentioned, 8 charging stations. So originally there weren't any, so they've added that in. So we're excited about that. There will be no really substantial improvements to the building. They're cutting in a few garage bays, but other than that, it'll just be paint and new signage, as you can see, indoors, as I mentioned. So this is going before the ARB at the August 2nd meeting for review and approval as a minor site plan application. So we're excited about that addition. Further down on the south side of on the bottom of the screen, we've got the Redwood Apartments. This is the second development, Redwood, within the community. This will be located at Heritage Woods Drive. So they're currently under construction on a 7-acre piece. This will be 49 units, single-story apartments, very similar to the same development that's taking place on Ridgewood Road. And lastly, in terms of large-scale development, at the bottom of the screen along Rothrock, just east of 77, this is a proposed mixed-use compact development. So this is an overlay zoning classification over the commercial general retail that exists there today. So this was before the ARB, I want to say almost a couple years ago. And so it has now come back before the ARB to include an additional 15 acres. So this is will be rezoned, as I mentioned, as an overlay. And this also has to, as part of the text, or excuse me, as part of the overlay rezoning, has to have a development plan approved with that simultaneously. So the current proposal for that development plan for phase 1 is a 7-story mixed use building. There'll be 52 apartments. The number is kind of fluctuating depending on the size of the units, but around 50 apartment units. If you can see on the elevation closer to Rothrock Road is proposed a mixed use retail building up on the front of the road and a top floor restaurant above the apartment complex. So that's phase 1. The additional 15 acres would include a phase 2, which would be residential townhomes, which would be on the rear of the property closer to 77 in the wooded area. And then phase 3 is really to be determined, but would be retail use and potentially some community service facilities. So again, that development plan would be tied to the overlay district that's currently being accepted by the ARB, but it's got many more reviews to go, very preliminary in stage, but we'll get the overlay with the rezoning as well as going through the ARB for all the necessary approvals. But those are just the highlights on large scale projects. Any questions on any of those 3? All right, and then just to touch on mid-scale projects. Thank you. So it's kind of cut off at the top of the screen. I apologize about that, but we do have some renovations taking place at the Wendy's up in the Montrose. So they're retrofitting all the Wendy's locations with new signage, exterior and interior improvements. So that's taking place. If you've been by in the last couple of weeks, you've probably seen those changes taking place. Further south along Ridgewood Road, Mr. T's driving range. So this is a new development on the former Highlander driving range that was, I believe, in operation 10 plus years ago. So this is a new driving range. Some of the building has been already painted and some improvements have been made, but will take place there along Ridgewood Road, just south of 77. So that's currently going through the ARB for some sign approvals, BZA for potential impacts to the floodplain. But we're recommending a lot of the improvements that are proposed. Most of those are going to be very minimal impact on any wetlands or floodplains because it's going to basically be natural area for the driving range that stood there before. So that's going through the ARB right now. And then on the bottom of the screen, further down along Copley Road, we just introduced CNL events. So we just had a.
Can you explain the acronym, or is it the name, or what is that?
So it's Carolyn Wallace is the owner, and I believe her middle initial is L, so it's CNL. So it's her initials is what it stands for. But it's pronounced CNL.
CLs.
CLs, sorry.
That's okay.
Pronounced what?
Yeah.
CLs?
CLs.
CLs
Like,
events.
they're like cells to have events in.
No, it's
It's
CL.
her
It's
initials.
her initials.
That's her initial, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I, the star threw me off. in the middle.
Yeah, the asterisk. So yeah, we clarified
You know,
that with her today. So she's at the multi,
I don't know if anyone else has figured it out or not. Willing to admit I couldn't.
That was a typo.
Yeah. So she's at the multi-tenant space on the southwest corner of Copley and Jacoby Road. We held ribbon cutting for her today, so thank you to Chief Meyer and Ms. Marshall for attending that. It was a nice event. So that's going to be a rentable space for birthday parties, for kids, for family events and meeting space. So it's great to see the tenants fill up that building and that location. Just east of that at 277 Copley Road, we've got a multi-tenant building there as well. This is going to be a cafe with an outdoor permanent kitchen. So this is going to be the Cow Matcha Cafe. So they're currently using one of the tenant spaces for seating, and they'll have some outdoor seating as well. So that's currently under construction. I think you've seen some signage and some outdoor seating taking place down at that building as well. So that's the update on mid-scale. We'll continue to update the board as some of these projects come up. I just wanted to mention some of the notable ones. So appreciation to Shauna Graffier, zoning inspector, for coordinating all these projects and many more. She does a great job of moving these through the process very quickly and also accommodating any agency necessary approvals and meeting all the requirements. On the property maintenance side, just to let the board know, Jeff Newman has issued 40+ violations just in the summer. So we've got new and pending violations quite a bit this summer. We've got a lot of rain, so the grass is very high. So, thanks to Jeff for working very hard and tirelessly. He's coming and going, issuing a lot of violations, but hopefully some of those we'll get some before and after pictures that we can share with the board and the results of his work in the coming meetings. My next item back on the regular agenda would be to discuss with the board a tree sale. So we would like to do a community tree sale at Heritage Days under the Community and Economic Development Department's booth. So we've received multiple requests from residents as well as requests from the board members on the Architectural Review Board and Zoning Commission to do some kind of tree sale. We've seen this done in other communities, and we think it would be a good fit for Heritage Day. So the format of this would be purchasing, I think we want to keep the number kind of low, just about 25 trees. The effort would be to get some bulk trees, some larger 5-gallon, 10-gallon trees that the residents would be able to purchase at a discounted price. So if we purchased roughly 25 trees, the total amount would be potentially around $2,000, utilizing the tree fund to pay for those. And then the residents would come to Heritage Day. We'd explain the different types of trees. They could purchase those, and then within a couple of weeks, be able to pick them up at whatever nursery or landscaping company we work with. So the hope with just purchasing 25 is that we'd be able to sell them all, and then following Heritage Day for the coming weeks, we'd advertise any additional ones we had left over. And then if we do have a few, hopefully we don't have any, that we can plant them at the park. So
So do you have to have them all there, or can you just sell on consignment? You don't have to buy any.
we could. I think the goal with this would be to buy them in bulk and then be able to provide the residents a little bit of a discount than if they were to go out and purchase them, just as a singular tree.
Because if you just had like a couple samples, like of the different
Yeah.
trees you would sell, you could do some kind of assignment and arrange. I don't know. I like the promotion. I think it's a great idea
Yeah.
because people don't think about that or buying a tree, or they talk about it, but then it puts it in front of them. If they're gonna have to go pick them up though anyway,
Right.
make some arrangement or have multiple multiple nurseries involved.
You're looking at, I think what you're trying to do is get a commitment for X amount of trees to get a discount at whatever discounted rate they
I mean,
arrive.
how substantial is it of bulk this? You know?
Well, I think it was around 20% if we purchased at least like 25. And,
This
like I
time
said,
of year,
yes,
can't you could negotiate that anyway or something? I'm just thinking if you did a consignment, it's still a consignment.
Mhm.
And, or do you have to, I mean, what if you buy 20 and sell 10 then? I just think that somebody would arrange some type of a consignment sale. There's no risk to
What-
anyone at that point.
What if we did, and I love the idea as well, so I'm going to support it. I'm just trying to maybe tweak it for the best outcome. How about if we advertise it on our social media platforms and also on the signs at the circle that we're going to do this and take pre-orders?
Yeah.
So if we can, maybe you'll get 50 orders before Harry's Days and get another 15 or 20.
Yeah.
And that would even create a better discount. So I don't know if that would help for you.
The more the better, for sure.
Right.
I just didn't want us to purchase too many and then, have 15 left over, but. the hope
But
would be to make it-
at least a pre-order.
Yeah.
If there is any, if we can get it advertised, I know it's only 10 days away
Yeah.
for.
But I
You
think
can do
there's time.
that. You have the budget, the tree fund money that you
Mhm.
obligated to use. You could, I guess you could go to a nursery and say, we're gonna buy a certain dollar amount and not even number the trees. You could have a varied price anyway. Some people might want expensive trees and some don't.
Yeah.
Just commit to the nursery for, how much money were you gonna spend? You said 2,000?
That was the amount for
Commit to 2,000. You're gonna do pre-order. You might do the whole 2,000 pre-order and see brought up, and then have a consignment to sell, obviously whatever else.
Yeah, I think with whatever we pre-order and if we need to commit to a few more and then we can, if residents are still interested and for some reason we don't have enough, we can always work with them with the different businesses and do consignment. So that's an option. And we'll have all the information. Maybe we'll have a couple samples, but we'll have all the information here today about the types of trees and information about the growth and so forth. So they have some information about what they're buying.
Well, I would think if you're talking to a local business about this and sourcing the trees, that you just have to find out what the threshold is, either in dollars or in number of trees to get the discount you're seeking. Right? That's what you're after. You're after the break point. And once you, if you know you commit to the break point, then that business has to be able to, if the orders are 2-3 times that break point, they're 2-3 times that break point, good for that nursery, good for the township.
Okay.
Right? But you just want to know what the break point is.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know, the timing of, time of the year matters, those things.
Yeah, I think some of the conversations we've
You
had
can
is
plant in
it's
the
sometimes
fall.
we can plant up to, as late as Thanksgiving. So it's just a matter of getting the trees ordered in time. So I think we've got
So
at
if
least
you're
60
gonna
days
order
after
arrangement
Harry's Day.
anyway.
Yeah.
That's the consignment, pre-order.
Yeah.
Works in your favor.
So I'm hearing from all three of us that you have our full support.
Okay.
So what you can adjust as needed, but maybe I'm not asking you to use my idea, but it might help. So.
Yeah, no, this is great
Or-
feedback. I just didn't want you guys to walk by
Or
Harry's
his
Day and
idea,
see
or his idea. My
see
word.
me there.
Sell as many as you can, in other words.
Okay, so we'll just keep you updated on that, but we'll plan to move forward
Okay.
on that. I think my last item here is capital project updates. So just 3 updates. Not much has happened between now and the last meeting. On the Sunside Drive Improvement Project, we held an introduction meeting with Summit County Planning Commission to walk through the major subdivision process, which this project would qualify. So we now have a meeting scheduled with the county engineer's office to review the concept and the road layouts and get conversation with them on skew, tangent, curve, and so forth. So we're working through that. On the Tri-State Trail project, I mentioned that the wetland delineation has been completed. EnviroScience is submitting on our behalf to the Army Corps for the jurisdictional determination to determine whether it's going to be Ohio EPA that would have involvement over any improvements or impacts to the wetlands, or it would be the Army Corps. So they have submitted that was included in our cost. So we'll hopefully have the results of that very shortly. Lastly, I wanted to, on the concept of trails, the trail committee that we mentioned previously is about 90% formed. So we're working on setting up a meeting probably mid to late August to kick that off. So if you have any, residents, people you have in mind, please send them my way. Trustee Schulte, you just gave me a few names that we'll include as well. So again, that list I don't think is complete and always can be adjusted. So if anybody comes to mind between now and when the meeting's scheduled, please let me know. But we will definitely have a meeting in August. That's all the updates I have. I do have a couple requests for executive session to discuss potential land acquisition and sale of property, as well as pending litigation.
Okay. Anything else for Mr. Klein?
Of course I do. So because Cleveland Mountain Road is blocked, I travel often now on Ridgewood down to Brunsdorf. I can't help but notice that there's a property across from Stark and Knoll. It looks like they're having a growing, everlasting, all summer long.
I just
Yard
thought of that today because I saw it. It
With
says
the-
there,
There's like a pod out there. There's like a
There's not,
moving.
They have-
it's
there is a pod.
Yeah,
But
there's like a storage.
huge
I just
mess,
drove by
and
it today.
It says that
I was
there,
Jeff is out today, but I was gonna talk to
Okay.
Jeff about it.
I happen to notice, just like they collected stuff and they're selling it, I don't know.
I think they're just collecting. It
It's a-
seems to grow.
It
Yeah.
looks like it's on the Hoarder TV show.
I'll talk to Jeff and we'll find out. But I did notice that today.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Klein? Okay, moving on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any old business?
I do have an item of old business. I just wanted to thank Joan Gangle and her family and all of the volunteers that helped out at the Copley Classic Car Show. We had over 185 vehicles and 143 that were judged. And every participant said it was the best organized show they've been to all season. Joan and her family basically do this on their own and get some support from other volunteers the day of, but up to that point, they do all of the work. And they are there flipping pancakes at 7 o'clock in the morning. And I just want to recognize the fact that they did this really for Copley Township. They don't have any personal gain. All of the money is going to the volunteer organization, which will be later distributed to Copley Outreach or some other philanthropy. But just noting the work that they did and the volunteers that participated for the full day that they were there.
Any other old business? Go ahead.
I think Jim Bowley is on.
Mhm.
He's still-
Oh, yeah, you want to talk about the site distance on Ridgewood? Mr. Bull, are you still with us?
Yes, I am. After our meeting 2 weeks ago, I reached out to the design engineer, DV Resource Group, formerly TGC, and made them aware of the concerns that we have with the site distance. And I did hear back from Chris Schmidt. He was the design engineer on the site, and he's working with Redwood to look into the site distance to see what the issues are. They want to let them see what the existing site distance is. So that was discussion we had late last week. I've not heard anything from them since, but they are at least looking into the site distance at the entry drive, Violet Avenue on Ridgewood. I'm just waiting for a response back from the consultant.
All right, Chief, I could make out part of that. And thanks, Mr. Bull. It's not your system, it's ours. I'm gonna let Chief Meyer interject here as well.
Couple of things is he noted at the last meeting, we asked him if he would check into the site distance issue, and he immediately got back with me later that evening after he checked his records and indicated that the original traffic plan was conducted by a private engineering company on behalf of Redwood. And I believe that company was TCG, and they indicated that the site distance could be met at the location, but it was not met because there were some low bushes in the right of way or near the right of way that reduced that site distance. So he had suggested that, as Tim suggested, trying to meet out there on site with the police department, Tim or other representative from the county engineer's office, and that traffic engineering firm to see if what the site distance was right now. I guess because after the construction process, perhaps they could have changed, or perhaps the roadway was not placed where it was originally supposed to go. He did send me an email today in which he indicated that the engineering firm that conducted that was TGC, which has now been acquired by Davy Company, and that he has spoken to somebody at Davy Company who is going to contact Redwood. They're going to come up, I think, with a plan to go out there and evaluate. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I think that's it.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much you can hear, so hopefully you can hear me. There's two different types of site distance that we evaluate. One is at the intersection, You'll look at the intersection site distance, and that typically is at a new roadway. And if that cannot be satisfied, ODOT does allow using the stopping site distance, which that was met for the design of the Redwood Apartments. We just want to verify that the stopping site distance has at least been satisfied. So we're just waiting for some confirmation from Redwood and Davie, formerly TGC, that they do meet the stopping site distance. We want to see what the site distance is right now, whether it's stopping site distance, intersection site distance. We want to know what footage that site distance is being satisfied for right now. There is some vegetation on that north side along the property line, and that overgrowth could be impacting the site distance. That is outside the right of way. We just want to know what that site distance is right now to see if they satisfy either of the site distances that were supposedly met during the design. So once we get a response back from Davie and TGC, we should be able to report back to see where things are.
You made reference to two site distances. One was forget the terminology, some type of site distance, and the other one is a stopping site distance. So it's two separate.
Intersection site distance and stopping site distance.
So one could be met, I think is what he said.
Okay. One's for people pulling out, one's for people stopping.
Right.
Coming around.
But the issue is.
At a minimum, the stopping site distance is the standard that ODOT requires to be satisfied. So the stopping site distance supposedly was met for the design. We want verification that that has in fact been met.
Okay. All I know is I'd like to meet with him out there. I hope he's able to arrange this, because regardless of what the numbers say, if you're there looking, I just don't see how it's met. I just think it's a.
Right. I was out there one day last week and took a look at it, and it's not great. I mean, it's definitely could be improved. I'm not sure what flexibility there is with the property owner as far as that vegetation. That would be ideal if we could get that resident to allow vegetation to be removed from that property. That would take care of it immediately.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the fact that you're assisting us in getting that resolved. If the chief says it's an issue, then it's an issue. It needs to be dealt with.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's why I want to make sure I got the information that we had to Chief Meyer after our last meeting, so we at least know what went into the study back in 2018, 19, whatever it was now. So we at least know what was the intended design at the time. Whether that's actually what's gone in, we want some verification from the design consultant that has in fact been done. So I'm waiting for some follow-up from that designer.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you again, sir. Appreciate
it. Certainly.
Any other old business? Any new business?
Just announcing Heritage Days is August 6th through the 8th. Friday night starts off with a movie night held at Copley Fairlawn Middle School. It'll be held on the football field, and there'll be food trucks available. I think the movie is Frozen 2.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't what was shown the first time.
Right.
Frozen 2 is this movie. And so that's Friday night. Saturday, the activities are from 12 to 7 at Copley Community Park. There's a baking contest. There's all kinds of kids games, inflatables, rock climbing. There's vendors, there's crafts, all kinds of things on Saturday from 12 to 7 at the park. And then Sunday is the Copley concert at Copley Circle. And I think it's Tailspin, or is that this Sunday? Tailspin is coming some Sunday, and it's supposed to be a great.
I didn't know, like I went to the last.
It's not me singing, so that's a good thing. Okay. Any other new business? Any correspondence? Any business from the floor? Mr. Jacob, so I hope we didn't bore you to death here, but what we did here was in accordance with Ohio Revised Code. Most of what the township has to do is in accordance with what's written by state law. Townships don't have the ability to write their own law like cities can do city ordinances. We cannot do that. So there's some things that we try to do and conform with what's already written by the state. So This is a procedure that we go through. You notice here that there's a board of trustees. They're separate from the fiscal office. Fiscal office handles all the funds coming and going from the township. The board of trustees approves where those funds go to and how they're spent. So they're two separate entities. So I'm trying to give you a quick rundown on government, which I'm 56 years old and still don't know it. So
You might not consider yourself fortunate having to sit through this, but I'll let you know, you are fortunate. This is actually one of our shorter meetings.
yeah, I'm trying to lengthen it here a little bit
Yeah.
because Chief
Could
Meyer
have easily been here another hour
is on.
before
just
you got
paying
your
for-
paper signed.
Yeah. So do you need anything from us?
Could you tell me your first full name?
Jacob Arbach,
Arbach, A-R-B-A-U-C-H?
A-U-R-B-A-C-H.
And you are a Copley Township resident.
And you're with troop number
411.
411. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
We do appreciate it. I know I'm sitting next to an Eagle Scout. I have 2 kids that are Eagle Scouts and we fully support it. I know Mr. Schulte, he's former military, so I'm sure he supports it as well. Anything we can do for you, we'll do what we can, all right? Good luck to you.
Good explanation.
Thank you. So I will entertain a motion to go in executive session for the, I'll stop there. We're going to go into executive session. That means the meeting is not over. There are certain things that the Ohio Sunshine Law does not want in public, and that's usually litigation. So if we're in a lawsuit, if they're negotiating a contract, purchasing property, there's a short list, a very short list of several items.
Personnel.
Employment of personnel is another one.
What's the motion?
So I'm sorry, what, Brandon? Yeah. So there are certain things we have to do behind closed doors, although we're not allowed to vote on anything. We can discuss it, we can't vote on it. So after you don't have to stay for this, but after the executive session, if there's anything that we decided on or think we want to decide on, we'll come out of executive session back into public and then make motions and vote on it. Make sense? Okay.
Before you go to executive session, do you want to discuss the capital projects when we come out of executive session?
It makes no difference to me. You want to do it now or do you want to do it after when we come back into public?
When we come back into public is acceptable. I think that would make more sense.
It's fine with me.
Oh,
If
time
we're
to
going
go
to
get
discuss.
the list.
And for the media here, we'll make sure it's in the agenda or on the minutes. So I'll entertain a motion to go to executive session for discussion of benefits of personnel in the fiscal office, for the hiring of personnel in the service department and benefits of personnel in administration, and executive session for the potential sale or purchase of property and pending litigation. We have to announce what this is going in for. We have to vote on it. So we're all in.
I'll second.
So, any discussion? Ms. Piper, recall the roll, please.
Trustee Dressel.
Yes.
Trustee Colner.
Yes.
Trustee Schulte.
Yes.
All right, we are taking a short recess. We'll come back. Thanks again for coming.
This conference will now be recorded.
I'll make a motion that we give Loudon Client his next step raise.
Yeah. Increase wages for Director of Community Development by 10% effective July 24.
So moved.
Second, Schulte.
All in favor, say aye.
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 He's going to usually do it and then we wouldn't. We said
I know.
and then we switched it. I like your better. Since they were trying
What
to write
else?
it down.
Resolution number 2021-82, approving a purchase order to EDG to prepare supporting documentation for the WPCLF application.
So moved.
Second, Schulte.
Any discussion? Okay, let's table that one. We'll need to nominate Ms. Marshall as the secretary pro tem. I make a motion.
Second for discussion.
Discussion? No discussion. All in favor, say aye. All right, Ms. Marshall is the Secretary Pro Tem. Back to the tabled item, the resolution for EDG.
She's writing them fast.
Any discussion?
I don't know if she agreed to it.
Will you call the roll, please?
Trustee Kohler?
Yes.
Trustee Schulte?
Yes.
Trustee Dressler?
Well,
That's it.
Go.
Capital projects.
Okay.
And bond issuance.
Okay.
Okay. We talked about whether or not we want to move forward with bond issuance.
Okay.
We don't necessarily have to determine the full amount of our bond issuance at this point, but we should get a vicinity of what we're talking about. Okay? Is that fair? And that way we can engage.
What are we gonna do with that information? Go for a bond, go for a bond?
We're going to go for our bond rating, and we're going to give them a range of X million to X million dollars that we're going to issue.
So why don't we,
You need to say what it's.
right, let's pick the project we want.
General infrastructure.
How are you gonna pay for that bond? How are you gonna make the payments?
We're going to make the payments from future JED revenue sharing
Okay.
from our great partner, Akron.
You have to show that
Aren't we using that to repay the loan?
this long.
What, this loan you're talking about, the bond?
Yes.
So what you're talking about?
No, I thought we were using the JED money to repay the county loan for the sewers.
Well, that's correct. How much can we do both? There's 425,000 a year comes from that, roughly, right? So we need to determine what the sewer is. And we need to determine what projects we want to move forward with, which the number one here would be build Sunset Drive, right?
So, yes, the short answer is yes.
Okay.
What's in my mind is this. Since our cheapest source of financing is sewer through this program, right? That's gonna be the cheapest source of financing. We should finance the entire sewer and find other use for the $1.7 million sewer fund by redesignating it to maybe just a capital improvement fund.
We already did, we didn't do that.
We did not do that.
We could do that, though.
We could do that. And we should also take the $1.8 million ARPA money, and we need to make sure we have a second use for that in the non-sewer projects.
So can we build a road with ARPA money? The next COVID money.
American Rescue Plan. I'm going to a seminar, or hearing a seminar tomorrow from 10 to 12 about what you can do with this.
Okay, but I think we're clear on the 1.7. Correct me if I'm wrong, but since our cheapest source of financing is for the sewer, we should finance all the sewer, and we should take the $1.7 million sewer fund and redesignate it as a capital improvement fund to allow us to spend it on Sunset Drive.
Yeah, I mean, we already started taking that money anyway.
Right.
Let's use that.
So that's the
Let's
1.7.
borrow every dime of that we can. It's
Yeah.
free. It's gonna be a 1%.
Yeah.
Borrow all that we can,
Mhm.
take that 1.7 and use that for trails or for roads or whatever else.
The other stuff. Okay, and so that leaves a question mark on the 1.8 ARPA money, whether we have to use that for sewer or if we use it elsewhere. So if we come up with the projects that we want to fund with a bond issuance outside the sewer funding, but a bond issuance, then that range is going to be within $1.8 million. So it'll be $5 million to $6.8 million, depending on what happens with the ARPA money. Follow me?
Yeah.
So that should be enough information to go to our financial advisor and our bond counsel and get this ball rolling.
We can specifically say what the projects
Right.
are and how we're gonna pay it back.
And I think it's,
But, okay, I get that. So, and I'm fine with that. But do we need a closer number? So let's say that
yes,
I think we're gonna do Sunset.
yes.
So if we do Sunset Drive first, shouldn't we first get it engineered, find out what it's gonna cost, and then go do our bond?
Well, so to an extent, we have those numbers. We have an EDG study and all this stuff done. I mean,
The $3 million.
yeah,
Well, that's what
2.9.
CISO's doing, right?
Yes.
They are, but our preliminary cost was 2.9, including sewer.
That was from the architect.
Right. It's preliminary.
Right.
And then for all the other projects, we have an EDG estimate. It's not the final engineering, but it's a ballpark number. And my thinking is pretty simple. If we come up with 6 non-sewer projects we want to do, 6, we will prioritize those 6, and we will do them A through F, 1 through 6. And if we run out of money before we get to 6, because of the actual engineering, the actual cost to do it is more, then project number 6 doesn't get done. You go until you run out of money on that list. That's how I would do it. But at this point, we have an estimate of all these projects, and we can't sit there and get engineering.
I think it's more driven by what payments we can make.
Yeah. Right.
So the first thing we need to know is the estimates on all these, and then how we fund it out. See, we have to first see what sewer is gonna cost, to what our payment's gonna be on the sewer, and then find out how much money is left out of that 425,000. Fund how much, that'll tell us how much debt we can get right there. I'm fine, I'm 100% fine.
Your bond rating does go by your debt, so we don't have debt. But if you start to incur all at once, I'm positive we'll have a good rating. But
Yeah.
They want specifics. I mean, the bond guy said in 2 places on his reply.
Yeah.
You need to have a specific project and.
So we can
He
do
said
that.
that you.
And I think we have enough to do that.
Right.
But we need to first find out what we're gonna have to pay for sewer. Because that's number one. We agree, sewer's number one, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so sewer's the number one project.
Okay.
And we have this 425,000 jet revenue that I think we all agree on using that for payments on the sewer, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now what's left? 200,000, 400,000, 150,000, maybe nothing. That's gonna tell us what we can fund, what we can make payments on a bond. So if there's 150,000 left, and that makes payments on $3 million of debt, that's gonna dictate what we do.
So depending upon your interest rate, okay, I plugged in 1%, $8 million, 20 years, and your debt service per year would be about 440 grand, the jet revenue. So that's your borrowing of 8.
So what was the amount again?
8 million borrowing. All right, on top of 1.8 ARP money and 1.7 current sewer fund. So 3.5 plus 8 gets you to 11.5 total to spend. All right,
Okay.
11.5, back out $4.9 million of sewer, round it up to 5. You got roughly another $6.5 million to spend on other stuff.
And in safety center, when the public perceives what we're doing, we got to add in the safety center, our ability to pass the levy. And
Right, so that's a separate issue.
But I'm saying all it's.
So, but this here is funding from our JED. All we're doing is
I know.
we're borrowing from the JED revenue
I know
at
we're
1%.
not raising their taxes.
Right, but if you're gonna do the safety center, in my estimation, my thought would be, you'd go to the public and you'd say, we are gonna issue, we want a levy to pay for the new safety center, and let the public vote on that.
I've
That's a
said
step
that
ahead.
all along.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying now.
Yeah.
So after we do all these other things,
Mhm.
it's still it's the mindset of the expense and the debt, even though it's a levy and they get to decide, you have to convince them.
Correct.
Then at that point, we're raising their taxes.
Well, not when you're raising their taxes, right?
It could be.
Yeah.
Because our tax base is so high, our tax duplicate, a minimal millage, but that, as that comes into play, as we create a situation where someone's going to argue, well, that 400,000 could be used to pay the bonds for the safety center. Why are you doing this? All of those arguments will be posed to us. So that's the elephant in the room, so to speak.
What could be used, you mean the current?
The 400,000 we're going to use for these other projects, although we're redirecting the money for the sewer, which helps the cause. or the sewer that needs to go in. But people, they don't look at each part of the puzzle. They just look at the big picture. We're just borrowing a lot of money and spending a lot of money.
But
And that's the conversation.
that is correct, and I know what you're saying, but when we go, if we go back for increased taxes for a safety center, it's for fire and police, which have been very highly supported in the community.
I have argued for that all along, that we completely fund that. People want, people support the safety services. I'm confident we can do
I
that.
think it would pass, but we
I'm
do
just
have to be
saying,
aware that people are going to see us spending a lot
This
of money.
affects that a little bit. How much? We don't know. And then, like you said, if people don't want it, then if they don't vote for it, then we don't do it.
Yeah. But in this case, when you're talking about a total spend of, let's say $10 million, $11 million, half of it's going to sewer. And we're saying that we're spending that half, no matter what. We're kind of committing that.
Yeah.
So now you've got another $6 million that I'll call it somewhat discretionary spend, but even that's not. Because 2.5 of that extra 6, the Sunset Drive down sewer, right? So now you're down to $3.5 million to put into parking lot, trails, wetlands remediation, or oxbows. It's thinning down pretty quick on what your I'll say optional items really are. There's not a lot of optional items here at the end of the day.
No, it's not discretionary spending.
Yeah. I mean,
Just one thing is the 400,000 we get from Jed has also been committed to the CIC. So you have to redirect that.
correct. Yeah. And I've been an advocate, and I think we've spoke on this before. Give them our vacant property, allow them to fund themselves. By the
Well,
sale of those properties.
They might need, so this is what I told them in the CIC meeting, discussion with them. We might have to fund them otherwise as well. So if there's an opportunity that arises that is advantageous to the township and the CIC, we might have to help them more, help the CIC more.
Sure.
So, and I think we can, outside of the JED revenue, do we have any room in our general fund to help them anywhere else?
No. No, we've been wheeling and dealing the capital projects.
So, and this was 2 years ago when we kind of redid this and we pulled the JED money out separately. That's really our spend. That's what we have to spend in my mind. So we are shooting the wad here, okay? And the question is, how far do you want to go? Now, my perspective is this: if you run sewer and you connect Sunset, some of that's going to be revenue generating in and of itself, and we're going to get more revenue back, property taxes, incremental JED revenue. It feeds on itself to a degree. So we will be handicapped for the interim period until those properties start to get developed and get online and start to pay us. We will not have really any discretionary income at that point. And maybe we want to leave some discretionary income. If we're getting 450-ish from JED, maybe we only want to commit 350 to debt service. Okay, well, it's whatever we all agree on. And that way we have $100,000 a year for those incremental things. But the flip side to that, and my perspective on it is this: interest rates are never going to be better.
That's the whole thing right there.
So
I was very critical when the previous board did not start the safety center, and then interest rates started rising. It costs a lot of money. Now they're back below what it was back then. So I don't want to eat my own words and not do this.
We've got to get the sewer in the ground. We've got to get Sunset fixed. Okay, you're at $7.5 million committed. You're going to borrow at least $5 million, right? I mean, you're pushing anyway. So the only question is, if you're going to put in sewer, you definitely want to follow that up with some sort of trail or some sort of walkway on Copley Road, right over top of the sewer. You want to allocate some money for that. You want the Southern Park connector, think he wants some of these things.
I look at the
What do you
trails,
think?
parkways, sidewalks are just cost per linear foot is
Stupid.
like putting in sewer.
It's stupid. I agree.
So if we're gonna cut out like the fat, I don't have this opposition for sidewalks. But if you look, even think of like Fairlawn, when we drive around, they don't have very many sidewalks. They don't. They have them on Market Street, or they have them on, some of the major. You know what? I just think that if we're gonna cut something, we have to look at that. And is that your multimodal?
Multimodal Central is Ridgewood, yeah. And then the multimodal park, do you go,
I would cut those out. I just think that.
Janice, you're missing line 16.
Well, apparently she didn't like that one at all.
Can you hit the back button up top? Go back, you know what I mean? I think there you go.
Return.
All right.
I'm sure that was
So
an
Freudian.
accident.
I don't want to, I'll stay here all night. I don't care. But I think this is a Christmas list. Until we know what our debt service is going to be on sewer, there's really no point in discussing this, my opinion.
Well, and also what your debt service, what your interest rate's going to be on a general bond levy. You got to get your rating.
True, but I don't want to get it too early. But we can ballpark that pretty close too.
You can get a pretty good guess on what the bond.
Right. We can get that
You can,
within a
and
quarter point.
you can, used to be, well, I don't know what they do now, those companies are out, but you could buy insurance to buy the rate. But Ambeck is they went bust in 2008. No, they went bust with. Yeah, is that one? Yeah.
I guess I'm of the perspective that I'm willing to commit $450 a year to debt service.
Oh, okay, now that's a different
And
discussion.
here's why I'm willing to commit it. If we don't commit it to that, it'll get spent elsewhere and wasted. That's what governments do. Sorry.
For example.
Well, I mean, I can give you local examples, we can give you national examples. Government is wasteful of money.
Oh, well, I say it all the time. I just said it about the whole service department. That doesn't mean that, most of the things we do, I mean, we discuss it and we spend the money where we have to
We
spend.
do, especially on the departmental side. But this township's made purchases in the past that, are coloring our discussion earlier today on some topics. And they should. And all I'm saying is we've set out on a path with a capital budget plan for multimodal, drinking water, sanitary, and storm. Now it's time for us to pick which of those projects, because we can't afford them all, we're going to do. And we should cap our debt service at $450 billion.
Okay, well, and that's gonna take some thinking for me. So, I mean, that doesn't sound like a bad number. But we do have the CIC to think about. And I don't have a problem with readjusting what we do for them. But I do want to have a reserve, so if a gem comes up, we need to be able to purchase it through us or through the CIC, regardless how it happens.
So you could leave, what you could do is you could leave part of, if you reallocate your 1.7 sewer fund to just a capital project, you could leave $500,000 sitting there.
Yeah.
For that emergency, right? And that probably makes sense. I agree.
What sits in carryover general fund now?
Well, but you're looking funky there on, you can't go to the other funds and really
Carryover.
look at those carryovers, because carryovers are spoken for
But those
our
are the
capital
ones that
budget
make,
needs down the
that
road.
when they
As far as-
run low, they pull on the general.
Right, exactly. I'm just wondering if something did pop up, we would have access to something.
So this is as of June, and this is assuming some spending, most everything of what's been appropriated. There'd be about 932,000 left.
932, you say? It's not much of a, it's not much, okay. All right. Anybody, you want to make any comments about it?
The only thing I think is that it's just a change in philosophy. So for 200 years, or I don't know, previous boards or whatever, but it's been very conservative, obviously, and they haven't taken on debt. And so the thought of, skipping by until these properties come to fruition and development happens, it's not like an entity that you can just go sell more, or you can go, you can't increase your revenue by just doing a better job of policing or fire service. So I guess that makes me a little nervous about, what if property taxes fall apart and you don't have that money to pay off your debt? Now you have no leeway whatsoever. So I'm just probably more conservative than wanting to commit all of our capital.
I think she's making a point. It's a big decision debt-wise. It's a progressive thinking. You can already, for me, take out the first 400,000 on your list for the management house.
Yeah, and that's fine. We already.
So, and if you look at things, and that's what, it becomes, okay, so now we do have the huge support for police and fire. But, that can change, and you just have to look at the political side. Janice brings up, not having the debt, we nickel and dimed here and there and made it through the different ups and downs. So you want to work on carryovers. You constantly pressure all of the departments on carryover and keeping the carryover. We're responsible for our own. And like we said, their carryover goes to them, not back to us. But we are able to adjust different things in the budget. So
We could borrow if needed, I guess, but the point is, the point of being hard on all those carryovers and being the hard-nosed, I've been, and I think collectively we all have been, on getting the carryovers added up, applying all the CARES Act money, those carryovers, is so that all those departments are fiscally sound, so that then that frees us up to actually make this call. If we wouldn't have gotten our house in order, in my perspective, we wouldn't have gotten our house in order fiscally over the last 2 years or so. Thank you, CARES Act. Thank you, ARPA, right? Big helpers. Also the budgeting we did. If we wouldn't have done that, then we would be having this conversation today. Those actions that we took have afforded us an opportunity to do this now. And so now I'm saying we should do this.
So we have a thing to work on. We need to work, we should have independent conversations with Janice about what we think how much money we have available for debt service. That's one thing. The other thing is how much debt service are we going to take on for the sewer? That's two. Once we get those two things answered, then I say move forward with that. And I don't think those are too far down the road. I mean, we're talking about we might know in 30 days.
Right.
Right? Right.
But you want to, having said that, you want to go ahead and at least proceed with a bond rating for non-sewer debt.
If you're 2 months out of issuing bonds, then sure, take your bond rating.
I think you should.
But I don't think you're 2 months out
No,
of issuing bonds.
I don't think we are.
Really?
For issuing bonds, I don't think so either. I think let's answer these two questions first and then go back to this, pick out what we can do and then go for issuing bonds and that's what I would do.
Bond raters are going to know what are you going to spend this money on.
Sure.
And so until you know how much you have to work with. That's my question.
And that was
Sorry, my wife's got a flat tire.
So
all right.
She's home now, but she's wigging out about how she's gonna get to work tomorrow.
So we have a question on the ARPA money, on what else we'd spend on it. Okay? And then really the question is, what projects do we want to fund? And maybe, maybe the answer here, because some of the stuff, especially on the multimodal stuff, you heard Dan Rice come in and say you should only be paying for 25-30% total cost, right? Maybe the way to approach the trails then is to actually say, okay, we're going to provide X number of dollars for trails. And turn it over to the trail committee to figure out which ones get done and what the funding sources are. Maybe that's the best way to do it.
Just a budget flat amount.
Yeah, flat amount.
This is what we have available.
Annual.
We are going to, we're going to borrow X dollars for trails. Go get it done. How much matching funds can you get now? Go, you're free. You have the entire team, Dan Rice. That really
So you think
set the tiger
keeping
loose.
the debt on and not using the money is still beneficial because of the low interest rate? I mean, who takes on debt if it can, lets it sit there?
Well, you're going to use it in the short term. You're going to use it in, let's say, the next 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, even the sewer, you're going to take on the debt, but you're not going to actually take on the sewer debt until you borrow the money. And similarly, from the bond perspective, you take that in and right, you're going to increase your costs until that money is spent down. Absolutely. But you gotta, that's the devil of it,
So would you put the Sunset Drive improvements and the safety center all in the levy
No, I think the
You would do
Sunset
the
Drive
Sunset
improvements come now.
from the bond?
Yeah. That's what I would say. I would say that your circle parking, in my mind, those are must-dos. If you're gonna run sewer, you've got to allocate, and maybe you just do a general stipend, like I said, you say, okay, we're going to put $1 million for trails. Dan Rice said, I'll figure it out. That might be the best approach, rather than us cherry picking the projects we want and don't want on trails. But the only way trails are gonna happen is if you give them some cash for the matching funds and say, go.
All right, well, I think we stick with the same thing right now. Find out, have independent conversations with Janice and see what we think we should do, what each of us want to come up with amount for debt service based on our current income. And get this EDG application done to find out what sewer is gonna cost us. And then if it's, the debt service for that's gonna be 300,000. And we all agree that we could debt service up to 400,000 a year. That gives us $100,000 to pay for a year. And what does that, what does that give us, right?
Yeah, I think that's the right approach.
Okay.
The only wild card in that is you don't know what your interest rate is exactly. Right?
Well, we don't, but I think we can ballpark that. I can make some phone calls and get within a quarter point.
All right.
Any other discussion?
So do we want to vote to reallocate the $1.7 million?
Not yet. Why?
Okay.
I don't want to. Okay, any other business? We voted on everything we need to vote on?
We voted on EDG, right?
Yep. It's done.
And we're not going to go seek financial counsel on a bond at this point.
Sorry?
No bond issuance.
Not until we get those two things answered. With it, I think it's going to happen. Just gotta wait.
Well, hopefully, the spreadsheet is at least a tool for each of us to think. It does what your payments are right at the bottom.
Right, we
If
just
you
don't know
pay it
how
down.
much you have to make the payments.
Well, it's down there. You put it in. Did you see that, Janice? Besides the yeses or blanks, if you go down, right, see where she is, Scotty? Right in there. If you put in over to the left on debt service, well, you see where it says amortization period and interest rate, you can change those two numbers and it'll do the math for you, okay?
All right. Any other business? Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
No. All in favor?
Aye. Only 10:30. Nice job.
Was it last 10:30?
Yeah.
I got to think.
It's all right. This is meaningful stuff here. I'm glad we're at this juncture, we are at this conversation.
Yeah.
See you, Scotty.